In this talk, we're going to learn about niches occupied by different communities. A community is defined as populations of different species that live close enough for interactions amongst one another. Thus, community ecology is the study of different biotic and abiotic factors that can influence the organization as well as functioning of different communities. The members of a community, which include members of different species, can interact with one another, and these types of interactions are called as interspecific interactions. Interspecific interactions among community members can have various effects on the survival and reproduction of the interacting members. These effects can be either beneficial or detrimental to the different species that are interacting in the community. Some interspecific interactions include competition, predation, parasitism, herbivory, mutualism, and commensalism. Competition is a type of interspecific interaction where individual species compete with other species for resources. This type of interaction limits the survival and reproduction of all species that are involved. Thus, this is a negative type of interaction. Species tend to compete with one another for different types of resources, and usually these resources are limited. Different species can compete with one another for territory, food, water, and other types of resources. The environment where an organism lives is part of its ecological niche. Ecological niches can be considered as the physical as well as environmental conditions required by different species, as well as the interactions that they have with other species in those environments. The niche accounts for many different aspects, which includes the utilization of space, the food that is consumed, the temperatures that are present in that environment, the conditions that are available for mating purposes, as well as different climate requirements. There are different types of niches. The fundamental niche is the entire environment that a species is capable of using and occupying. The fundamental niche of an organism depends on the resources available as well as the physiological tolerance limits of the organism. In this example, we are looking at the fundamental niche of Thamylus, which is a type of barnacle. It is able to occupy regions of low tide as well as high tide, and hence the fundamental niche is the entire region between the low tide and high tide. It should be noted that in most instances, species cannot utilize their entire niche because they have to compete with other species for the niche. While the fundamental niche is the entire niche a species can theoretically occupy, the realized niche is the one that the species actually occupies. We previously saw that Thamylus, which is a barnacle, is able to occupy the region between low tide and high tide. However, when we have the presence of another barnacle called as Balanus, we see that the competition between these two species happens. In such situations, the Thamylus occupies the region that's in the high tide area, while Balanus occupies the region that is in the low tide area. Thus, the realized niche for Thamylus is different than the fundamental niche. This usually occurs due to competition between different species. It should be remembered that realized niches are always smaller in area than fundamental niches. When different species compete for the same limiting resource in the same realized niche, it results in a phenomenon called as competitive exclusion. In such situations, the species that have the ability to utilize their resources in a much more efficient way will outcompete the other species. Let us take the example of two different species of paramecium that compete for the same nutrition. When they are present in different tubes, then both Paramecium aurelia and Paramecium caudatum are able to grow. However, when we put them in the same tube, then their realized niche is the same as their fundamental niche, and they both will compete for the same resources. In this scenario, we're able to see that Paramecium aurelia is able to obtain its resources in a much more efficient way and hence is able to grow more efficiently than Paramecium caudatum. Thus, in this scenario, both species cannot exist because of the competitive exclusion. In other situations, different species are able to coexist by occupying different realized niches in the same fundamental niche. This coexistence occurs because there is a partitioning of the niche, which is also called as resource partitioning. Thus, the different species are able to avoid direct competition. Let us take the example of another two species of Paramecium. Paramecium caudatum and Paramecium berseria are able to occupy different realized niches in a tube. When we allow them to grow all by themselves in a tube, we're able to see good growth of Paramecium caudatum as well as Paramecium berseria. When we put them, however, in the same tube, the fundamental niche of both is the same. Their realized niches, however, become different because they use different food sources that are present in the niche. Hence, they're able to coexist in the same tube even though their fundamental niche is the same because they are using different food sources, which makes their realized niches different. Resource partitioning allows different species to coexist in the same fundamental niche. Resource partitioning can happen in different ways, and one of them is through spatial resource partitioning. This is where different species occupy different parts or regions of the fundamental niche. In spatial resource partitioning, there is minimal overlap in the area of the realized niche where the different species reside. Let us take the example of different species of lizards that are present in an environment which is the fundamental niche. We can see one species of lizard present at the base of a tree, while another species of lizard is present in the trunk of the tree, which is its realized niche. For yet another species of lizard, their realized niche is going to be where the leaves of the tree are, whereas another species of lizard resides in another tree altogether. Thus, the different species of lizards have occupied different realized niches in the same fundamental niche, and by doing so are able to coexist. Another type of resource partitioning is temporal resource partitioning. In this instance, different species are active during different times of the day. Some species are active at night and hence are nocturnal, while others are diurnal, which is they're active during the daytime. By being active at different times of the day, the species can avoid direct competition with one another. In some instances, they can also evolve different nutritional needs, which allows them to avoid competition and coexist. Competition is usually detrimental to all species involved. When similar species occupy the same region, they can minimize competition by evolving different characteristics. This is called character displacement. Character displacement promotes sympatric speciation and also favors adaptive radiation, which results in the formation of new species. Let us take the example of the beaks of finches that are present in different islands. We notice that when finches are present in different islands altogether, then there is no change in the types of beaks that they have. However, when we compare the beaks of finches that are present on the same island, then we start noting differences. These differences allow the finches to eat different types of food sources, and hence it minimizes the competition between the different species and allows them to coexist in the same fundamental niche. With this, we come to the end of our talk, where we learned about communities and different types of interspecific interactions. We also learned about ecological niches and what constitutes as a fundamental niche and a realized niche. We learned about the phenomenon of exclusion and coexistence and how resource partitioning can favor coexistence. We then finally learned about character displacement, which can also reduce competition among different species in a community.